Welcome to In Her Voice, a podcast created for women who listen to and live by their deepest wisdom, their inner voice. This was made for you, the woman who feels pulled to more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to be a world changer. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am an inner voice coach. Join me here each week as we explore what it means to reach for your inspired potential, all while honoring your worthiness each and every day. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly, and I am so excited that you're here today. This is such a juicy episode. I cannot wait for you to listen to it. I have a return guest, Hale, on with me today. You might remember her from her episode with me called Wild and Holy. And we are going deep today on money mindset. And this is so good. It's good if you're an entrepreneur. It's good if you aren't an entrepreneur. If you have your own business, you should definitely listen. If you don't have a business at all, you should definitely listen. And we just really spend some time talking about how we carry beliefs about money and how we can actually change that. And she gives us some really easy to implement tools to work on it. And I just love me some Megan wisdom. It's so good. So for those of you who haven't heard Megan before, let me just tell you a little bit about her. Megan Hale is a leadership coach, integrity expert, and founder of Wild and Holy, providing mindset and energetic wisdom mixed with business strategy for women entrepreneurs to show up braver, go all in, and expand into their fullest expression. Through grounded leadership, she guides her clients to hold exquisite space for themselves during times of deep expansion while consistently growing their profits and visibility to serve at their highest level. Let me tell you something, you guys. I felt like I could have talked to Megan for 3 times as long as we talked. I was super sad that the interview was over. It's so good. Please take the time to listen. Share it with your friends and check in with me and let me know what you thought, because I'm guessing that I'm not the only one who needs to work on my money mindset. Here's Megan. Well, welcome back to In Her Voice, Megan. I'm so excited that you're here with me again.
I know, me too. I feel like it's been like so long and so much has changed since the last time we talked, but I'm so glad to be back.
I know. I was trying to figure out, I think it was about 2 years ago that you were on In Her Voice talking about Wild and Holy, which I still love. And now today things have, taken a twisty turn, across many states and years for you. And we're going to talk about money mindset today.
Yes.
And, isn't money a hard thing to talk about sometimes?
It used to be, for sure. Now it's like one of my favorite things to talk about.
Well, so can you take us through that transition of it being something that was difficult and now being something that like you want to come on a podcast and talk about?
Yes.
Because that's a pretty big change.
I know. So, I think that money is such a robust concept and topic because we all have our own experiences with money. We all have our own stories around money, our own beliefs around it. Like, this is something that's a part of our life for, from the very beginning, whether we are aware of it or not. It's always kind of operating in the background. And so I think for me, growing up, money was something that equaled a lot of things for me. I had a very prominent financial figure in my life who was my paternal grandmother, who was very wise at investing and saved a whole bunch of her money, but never really enjoyed a whole lot of it. So she had a lot of really strong beliefs around money that absolutely impacted my relationship with it, and beliefs around it of what it meant to be good with money, smart with money, safe with money, and all those things. But then money also kind of took on a couple of different roles in like my nuclear family of like how my parents navigated money, talked about money, experienced money emotionally. And so I think, money has always been something that I thought if I could just get enough of, then I wouldn't have to worry about money. I wouldn't have to experience conflict around money. Like money solved a lot of problems that I thought in my mind, like as a young girl. And so the interesting thing around money is as you become an entrepreneur, it's very apparent what kind of money stuff that you might need to be working through to really start to create more sustainable and steady supportive revenue for yourself. And so for me, money was never something that I thought I would be an expert in. It was something that I thought that I would need to be a student in for a very long time. And over the course of my entrepreneurial journey, money really became a big part of my healing. And I think today I'm still very much a learner when it comes to money, but also I've gained a whole lot of wisdom and perspective for how we shift into a relationship with money that feels really good. And a lot of that has come from understanding the spiritual messages that I was carrying around money, which was very anchored in my work with Wild and Holy of really what does it mean to live into your own personal truth, including your financial truth. And now I'm here talking about money as this beautiful co-creator in our lives that can be fun and empowering and liberating and expressive and creative and so many beautiful things.
Yeah, there's so much there. And I think that the place I want to start is generational stories around money, because I think that's something that we can, each and every one of us can very easily identify, because we can say, oh, this is how my parents were with money. So I'll start with my own story. Growing up, I lived in, I grew up in a sort of a middle class, we had everything that we needed. We didn't have everything we wanted. And that was a big, we talked about that in my house. Like, well, mom and dad give you what you need. And if you want something, then you work hard for it and you save your money. And then, so I was getting that message at the same time that if we came into contact with someone who did have a lot of money to spend on things that they needed. For example, say somebody that my parents knew got a new car and it was fancy. My mom would say, oh, well, must be nice.
Yes.
And that must be nice became, I feel like that was a generational attitude towards money. Like must be nice, like a little bit of resentment, a little bit of anger there, a little bit of judgment there. Definitely. And so, as I've gotten older, I've sort of recognized like, ooh, like there are certain times like I see things and I feel that must be nice come up. So talk to us about how we heal those kinds of wounds and stories and like turn our perspective and shift our paradigm of when it comes to money.
Yes. Okay. So one of my favorite podcast episodes I've ever recorded is called The 5 Love Languages of Money. So for everyone who's listening, before entering into the coaching space and before becoming a Profit First professional, I was a psychotherapist. And my zone of expertise was really helping people understand like relationship dynamics and especially transgenerational family dynamics that were really contributing to how they saw themselves, how they thought about love, and all of these really important pieces of just who we are. So one of the things that has been tremendously helpful in thinking about money is really thinking about it through the lens of the 5 love languages. So if you're not familiar with Gary Chapman's work, he talks about these 5 ways that we typically like to show and receive love. And depending on what your love language is, you're going to have a very specific way of how you feel connected, respected, cherished, important, all of these things, right? And the interesting thing is that we oftentimes end up in relationships with people who have a different language than us. And so even though we both love each other, we might not feel like all of that love is really fully connecting and getting through because we're speaking in different dialects. So growing up, I had this dynamic with my dad. We had very different love languages. His was acts of service and mine was quality time. And so my dad was always doing things for me, but never really being there with me. And for the longest time, I felt like my dad didn't really feel like I was important enough to spend time with. I knew that he loved me on an intellectual level, but spiritually, I felt really empty. Mm-hmm. And learning about the 5 love languages, I realized, oh my gosh, my dad is an acts of service person. And I could clearly see all of the ways that he had been loving me my whole life. And it completely shifted my narrative around his love for me, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that this bakes into transgenerational stories is that I had to go back to his parents of how they taught him to love and the love that he received, the way that love was modeled. And it created a softness for me to accept that this is how he loved instead of wanting to change him, okay? Mm-hmm. And so when we think about money, it's very important that we have some clarity around how we want money to love us because now we can kind of start to see, like, do we want, money to give us gifts? Is that like the love language that we really want? Do we want to have a healthy money conversation, like in our minds, like words of affirmation, like we are able to speak about money in a way that is kind and affirming and loving and all of those things? Is there a way for us, like we want money to be able to contribute in charitable ways in the world, right? Like there's all these ways that we can use money to experience more love and connection with it. But the way that we can think about the transgenerational components of this is starting to think about what our parents learned about money that was then passed down to us, and what their parents taught them about money and how it was passed down to us. And one of the really most powerful things to do is to put that into context of their lived experiences. So, to give an example of this, going back to my paternal grandmother, who was a very prominent financial figure of my life, who had very strong money beliefs around you don't owe anybody anything ever. You need to save all of your money, right? You need to invest your money wisely, like you don't take risks with it. If I go back to her lived experiences, she had some very prominent traumatic events in her life. She lost her mother at a very young age. She grew up in the Great Depression. Like there's a lot of context as to why she believed that way around money. Mm-hmm. And when you can put that into context, you start to see that that was based on their unique experiences. And now you get to create your own beliefs around money based on your personal experiences and the meaning that you're giving to them.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I got a little choked there. This is so good. And you know what I think is really interesting too about thinking about money in context of how we were brought up is I feel like there's like one of two paths. There's the path where we just do it exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. Or there's the path where we like rebel and do something that's yes. exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. And I feel like neither of those paths feel powerful. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about maybe a middle road?
Yeah, and I think the middle road really comes from integration and reflection. Mm-hmm. So we see this in parenting a lot too, right? Like we either repeat the same things the ways that we were parented, or we try and go to the other extreme where we try to avoid everything that our parents did. And the same can be true with money. So when we have, I would call this more of an extreme relationship with money where we are trying to avoid certain behaviors. What we're typically trying to do is create distance from things that did not feel safe, that did not feel nourishing, that did not feel supportive. However, there can be this tendency to make something like all right or all wrong or all good and all bad. Mm-hmm. And our work is to really re-examine what pieces of that were actually helpful, that could be actually supportive if they were maybe practiced in less extremes. And from that place of doing that reflective work, we can choose which pieces of that we want to integrate into our own relationship with money.
And when you talk about reflective work, is this journaling? I mean, how do we get to the heart of these ideas and distinctions?
I think journaling work is extremely helpful. Also, reading books around money. And the way, because money is something that we project a lot of things on, especially like values, right?
Must be nice.
Yes. And so starting to tune into like your earliest money memories can be really helpful. Starting to question what you've been taught about money from not just your parents, but from like society as a whole. I mean, this goes several different layers, right? Especially as women with money, like there's a lot of messages around what it means to be a wealthy woman and being powerful as a woman financially and being independent and being trustworthy with money and knowing what to do with it and like all of these things that we have to navigate. And so I really think that journaling can be really helpful around your experiences, what you've been taught. And the other thing that's been really cool is when you have like a money system in your business, like which is what Profit First is. And Profit First is like an allocation system of how you are stewarding your money. The behaviors that you take with your money can be very telling of some beliefs that you might hold around it. So for example, if you are more likely to pay your business more than you pay yourself, there can be this belief that you don't fully trust your business to provide for you, or that you don't really need that much money. And that's fine if that's totally true, right? But for many of my clients, it's like we want to be paid more, but not feel okay paying ourselves more. And so you can kind of see that shake out in the actual behaviors when you're stewarding your cash.
Yeah, I want to talk about Profit First in a second because I love it and hate it at the same time. But before we get to that, I think one thing that's really coming up for me in all of this is if you want to change your relationship with money, there has to be the willingness to change your mind about things.
Oh, yes.
And I see this, I feel like I'm seeing this a lot in our society in many regards, like with all of the racial injustice that's coming to light that we're really dealing with on a personal and societal level. Like it's hard for people to change their minds about something that feels so fundamental. Without it affecting like their identity. And I think money is one of these kinds of things. Like, well, this is the way we do it. So how do you get over that hump?
Oh, that's a big question. I think I go back to my psychotherapy days of really creating a softness for people to believe that maybe something else could be possible. Or that maybe something maybe something else could be true. And one of the things that I would tell them is that if you can just start with maybe is like creating a crack in the door where something new can possibly come in. And I think oftentimes, especially like, I think in the spiritual world for sure, like there's a lot around like manifesting and money affirmations and all of these things. And if you've ever used an affirmation and you're saying these words, this belief that you want to be true, but it doesn't feel true, and you're trying to like force it into your psyche of like, this is my new belief.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Yes. Sometimes, and I would maybe say most of the time, that's not really going to get you to the result that you're after. And so what needs to happen is to create a softness. And that softness oftentimes starts with maybe. So maybe money can feel easy, for instance. Feels a lot more possible than money is easy.
Right.
When you've spent your whole life working hard for it, right?
Yes, I love that. And that was the second time that you've used that phrase, create a softness. And you know what I love so much about that is, to me, and I'm sort of sitting here going through all of the thoughts in my head, sometimes I think of money as being masculine. And, like it feels manly to me in a way. And probably a lot of that comes from those generational and transgenerational stories that we were talking about. And creating a softness feels feminine. So it feels like an integration of both sides of those things. Like we need the masculine and the feminine in that. And I just love how that feels when you think of it that way.
Doesn't that feel so good?
Yeah. It's like lovely. Like that's
really
the word.
It really is. And I think it's like, doing a lot of like the love language work, especially around money in 2017 and 2018, I realized that, if I wanted money to love me, I had to also love it.
Yeah.
And that meant allowing myself to be supported by it, to rest in it, to build intimacy with it, which I know feels very like human to human relationship but that's exactly how it works for me. And thinking about money as what does it feel like to be supported in a masculine way by money, and what does it feel like to be supported in a feminine way with money. I think that's one way that we can really start to get a much broader perspective of how we want money to truly feel and operate in our lives and businesses.
Yeah, I just wrote this down for me, but I'll share with everyone else. Money as nurturing. Like when I think of a feminine quality, that is one of those qualities that I really love. And what would happen if we allowed money to nurture us? Whew, like that feels magical.
It can be magical. Like that's what I love so much about money, is that it can be whatever you make it.
Well, and one thing that I find interesting about talking about being in a relationship with money and loving money and like letting it support you and all this stuff, right? I grew up where it was almost like if you wanted too much, then that made you greedy, and that was wrong. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. And so how is it the same process, sort of just the same, maybe create the softness that you start to work through understanding that it doesn't have to be something that you need, but not something that you want?
So I think in this situation, one of the tools that I really lean on is the both and concept.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really had to navigate with this whole money piece is I had a lot of religious and spiritual messages around money, of what money meant, of what wanting money meant, and what that said about me and all of these things. And I'll never forget, like there was like this huge spiritual moment for me. I was traveling in Europe in 2006 after I lost a really good friend. So I was walking through some really deep grief while also seeing some of the most beautiful things of my life. And I was standing in this cathedral in Dublin. And there was just so much gold and jewels and marble and like all of these things all over this cathedral. And I just got this like sickening feeling of like, this church is just so wealth. Like there's so much wealth here, and this is supposed to be a holy place, right? Like there was so much just dichotomy in that. And I got really angry. However, what I realized years later through my own spiritual work is that that church was both wealthy and holy. And where I was in my own spiritual beliefs at that point was realizing that the church was me. I am a temple. I am a church. God lives within me. And so if that church, that structure could be both wealthy and holy, why couldn't the same be true for me? And so when we think of terms of like if I want money, I must be greedy. What would be the alternative of saying I want money and I am loving? I am giving, I am in service, and really creating a bridge of like both and instead of it being so rigid and so either or. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I love it. And I find duality, this both and that you speak of, to be such a great tool in every aspect.
Right?
In every aspect, like not just money, but in everything. And it's challenging because our brains don't want both and. Like that is not a natural state for our brains to be accepting of both sides of the coin. But the more that we can do that, I think the less suffering we will have. Like we're not going to have to be arguing with ourselves all the time when we come to accept both and.
Yeah, and I think it's also like the other component of this conversation is does the truth exist that some people who want money are greedy? Sure. Right? Just like, power can be used in really toxic ways, like we see in these systems of oppression that we are living in,
Yeah.
And the opposite can also be true, that money can be used in some really powerful, loving, kind, compassionate, world-changing ways, just like power can be. And so when we have a firm belief that, wanting money must mean this, look for the evidence where the opposite is true. And that'll help you get a more complete picture and give you permission to decide what it means for you. Because this is really all around, and I think that's why, the spiritual work had to come first before money, because I had to have that foundation of choosing my truth.
Yeah.
And that was paramount to choosing my financial truth.
Ooh, this is juicy, Megan. It's so good. And I think what I'll do is I will definitely link to your first interview in the show notes and in the podcast app that you're listening to, because this is exactly what we talk about in that interview, if I'm remembering right. Sort of like shedding the beliefs that we were clothed in, but that we don't necessarily have to own as our own anymore.
Yes.
So let's switch gears a little bit, because what you specifically do is you help entrepreneurs work on their money mindset and create a system and get clear on the both and all of those things that we've been talking about, so they can thrive in their business. And you specifically mentioned profit first, and we don't need to go into like the nitty gritty of this, because there's a lot there. I've read the book. I've set up all of my mini accounts.
Yay.
And I'm working on it.
Yes.
But for people who don't know what you're talking about, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's sort of integral to the work that you're doing with entrepreneurs.
Yes. And so I think, one of the things that really transformed so much, well, there's been several different milestones. In 2018, the very end of 2017, I was getting ready to go on maternity leave with my second little boy. And my husband was getting ready to deploy for 6 months, just 3 weeks after we had him, which meant I had a 1.5-year-old and an infant for 6 months. And before going on maternity leave, I really was like, what is realistic for me to achieve in my business? And I need to be really mindful of how much time and energy I commit to my business, because I know I'm going to have to be wildly present for my family.
Right.
And so what came through at that moment was a different way of structuring my business that allowed me to double my revenue working half the time that I was used to. So that completely shifted the cash flow that was coming into my business on a consistent basis. However, the piece that I really was still not sure of like, okay, I'm making money, but how do I make my money do what I want it to do? So I feel more discerning around where I'm stewarding it and where I'm directing it and all these things. Because I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, you're like, well, how much do I really need to be making, to pay for taxes and to cover my business expenses and to cover me? And also I kind of want to invest some more into my business. So how do I make sure I have enough for my future dreams, right? And to grow into them. And so that's when I found Profit First, which answered all of those questions. It really helps you take charge of your cash flow, first and foremost, because you are directing your money into specific accounts every 2 weeks. So you always have a good pulse on what's happening in your business, which I love. It really helps building intimacy and connection with your money. But the other thing that I love is that it gives you some recommended margins. So you know what a healthy, sustainable business should be, like what percentage it should be setting aside for taxes, how much you should be paying yourself, your operational expenses, having some profit in your business too. it really helps clarify things in such an easy, intuitive way that it's just phenomenal for helping you feel like you know what is going on with your money.
For sure. I would say, and I like it. I would say I have all my accounts set up, and I figured out my percentages and things like that. And it certainly helps you see that how you're spending your money. Like that's what I've noticed too. Like, oh, I'm not just using this account as like my free for all. I can really be wise about how I'm spending money and about if I need this thing or if I need this thing, and make good decisions.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I love with it is it integrates so seamlessly to like the other systems that I've created in my business. Like I have a whole profit planning tool that I use in my business and I teach to others. It's called the Money Map. But it really helps you clarify how much your dreams actually cost instead of just pulling some arbitrary number from the sky. And then creating the actual strategy for how you're going to intentionally fund those dreams by leveraging the magic of profit first. So it's not only very easy to use, it works on our natural human tendencies of just kind of checking our accounts to kind of get a feel for where we are. But it's also something that we can really use to our advantage to like make our dreams financially real. And that's the thing that gets me excited. Like it's helped me reach so many different financial goals. And when I implement it in other people's businesses, they're like, oh my gosh, like this dream is possible. And I know where, like when I'll actually get there and I know what I need to do in order to make it happen. I'm like, I know. That's like the magic of it.
So this is called the Money Map.
Yes.
Right? And you're doing a live version of this coming up soon, right?
Yes. So the Money Map has been a tool that I have been teaching for, it'll be 3 years in December. So this is a process that is very distilled. It's been perfected. I've taught it to hundreds of people at this point. And the process of it is really helping you get clear on what your personal financial goals are. So starting to live into your financial truth. And then also building out the business that will take you there with the most amount of ease. Because that's one thing that I have noticed being an entrepreneur is that we don't have to work so hard. We just have to work very intentionally. So I help you figure out some shifts to make in your business to help you reach your goals with more ease and where you're feeling more energetically supported. And then we integrate profit first into all of that. So we will be doing a live launch of that the week of August 17th. I'll be doing a free 5-part mini course called Feel Good Money, really talking about 5 shifts that we need to make to step into a relationship with money that feels good and really leveraging the power of the Money Map to help you make that happen. So the Money Map comes with group support calls for every other week for 3 months when you buy the Money Map, because I really want to not only give you the tool, but also hold space for any questions that pop up around your numbers, your allocations, your dreams, your offers, your business model, all of those things that really allows me to provide like holistic feedback for you to get where you want to go.
I love it. And you guys, you should go follow Megan on Facebook if you're not following her yet. She's so generous. Like that's one thing that I love about you. You're so generous with your wisdom and with your time. And I think that this is such a great program for people who are ready to sort of take the reins.
Yes.
And you know what comes up for me often is I don't love planning. I just don't like, I feel like it takes some of the excitement out of it for me. And I've recognized the longer that I've been in business that is not doing me any favors.
I think that's like a shift though, is like learning to find the fun and the strategy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so is that something that you help people with too, that
Yes.
fun piece of it?
Yes, I think money should be fun. It should feel exciting. It should feel like one of the best parts of your business. But I think that only comes from marrying the dream energy with it. And so For most of my clients, they honor their intuition, and I do too. But also, our intuition without structure or containers can run all over the place and deplete our energy very quickly because it has lots of great ideas. And my way of the money map really starts to harness that intuition and that dream energy and give you some structure and containers around it so you feel more supported. And I think that's where things really start to take off. We don't have to get even with budgeting and stuff, there's a line in your budget that's called a wiggle room. It's not very scientific, but it's money should feel spacious. Yeah. So let's intentionally make it feel spacious without budgeting down to the penny,
I love it. I love it so much. So for all of you who are listening, if you're completely intrigued by what Megan is saying, and even more importantly, if you're like me, you're intrigued by the tone of her voice and how excited she is when she talks about money, that's what I love. I want more of that. Yes. Because it doesn't have to be a drag. It can.
No, totally not.
Right. It can really be fun. And I think it's one of those kind of things that's an upward spiral too. The more time and attention that you put on it in a positive way, the better you feel about it, then the more time and attention you want to put on it, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And so I feel how excited you are. So for those of you who are listening, if this is something that you're interested in, I definitely want you to check it out. I'm going to give you a link where you can go sign up for the 5-part series and all of that stuff. It's kellycovert.com/money. It's super easy to remember, kellycovert.com/money. And I'm going to put that in the show notes too. So it will take you right to Megan's money map page where she talks all about the program and all of the great things that it has to offer.
Yes.
I'm excited. I'm excited for this. I'm looking forward to
Me too.
just seeing the transformation for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's I feel so honored that money has become such a central part of my work. It was definitely something I never anticipated because I felt like I just had so much money stuff. But sometimes that's how life goes, yeah. You're given mountains to show that they can be moved. And I'm a firm believer in that. But, I've been teaching the money map for, several years now, and people are still it's become the financial hub inside their business. And it's given them a framework to work with where money gets to feel like it's a co-creator for their dreams. And it just opens up so much when you have a different relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And it gets to feel like it's actually helping you and supporting you and creating your impact and purpose and all of the magical things that so many of us love,
Oh, so good. So good. Well, I don't want to let you go before I check in with you and ask you these days what your inner voice is saying to you.
Honestly, I was just in a serious car accident last week that I am completely grateful to have walked away from. But the thing that my inner voice tells me is to slow down, to savor, and to do even less, and to trust all of that.
Yeah.
And that feels really good because there's just so many moments that I just want to be more present for.
Yes. Well, I thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that you're okay. We were talking about it a little bit before you came on, and I saw the picture of your car, and I'm really glad you're okay.
I know.
Oh, my Lord. And I think that message to slow down, and the most important part is to trust it.
Yes.
So good. Megan, how can people find you on Instagram and all of those fun places?
Yes, I think the best place to connect with me is on my website because everything lives there, which is meganhale.co.
.co. And that's Megan, MEGANHALE.
Yes.
And like I said, if you're interested in the money map, I encourage you to go to kellycovert.com/money. That will take you right to Megan's site, and that's an affiliate link for me. So if you do decide to join and you heard about it on In Her Voice, I would so appreciate you going through that link.
Oh, and the other thing I would love to mention, when you go through the money map with me, you also get the invitation to become an affiliate as well. because I don't want you to just spend money with me. I would like to offer you the opportunity to also make money with me too. So that opens up when you come and join me inside the money map as well.
Yeah. And that's just another way that money can give to you.
Yes.
Do we really have to stop? I think we have to stop.
I love it.
Megan, thank you so much for being exactly who you are meant to be in this world, for being willing to be flexible and pivot and go into this new place with us and bring us all with you. I feel so honored to be experiencing it with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and witnessing all my pivots, you know? I think that's the other thing is like sometimes we're so nervous of like, what are people going to think? But then most of the time people are like so cheering you on. So I appreciate you, Kelly. Thank you.
Of course. You want to know one of the things I love the most about that interview is you can hear Megan's joy when she talks about money. And I just want you to imagine what it would feel like for you to feel that kind of joy and excitement when you talk about your money. Would that feel really great? Maybe it's time to step into a place where money can be magical and where money can support you and where you can have a relationship with money, like she said. So if you want to learn more about Megan's money map, and she's doing a live launch coming up soon, then you should check out the link, kellycovert.com/money. That is an affiliate link. And if you decide to purchase because you listened to this interview, I just want to say thank you, because that means a little bit of money coming into my accounts. And I appreciate you for that. And if you have any questions at all about the money map, feel free to reach out to Megan. She's super accessible on all of the socials. And I know she would love to hear from you about your thoughts and your questions and about all of the money things that you have coming up. So definitely be sure to give her a follow on all of those things. I want you to remember, when you are making money, you are creating opportunity. You're creating opportunity for yourself, for your family. You are creating a space in which you can be generous, in which you can do what you've been called to do with ease. All of those things are important. And guess what? You are deserving of all of those. You, yes, you are worthy.